Welcome. Are you joining from Dhaka or somewhere else?
Yes, I'm in
Okay,
Dhaka.
welcome back.
Thanks.
So with the permission of all the guests, if you agree, we can start.
Recording in progress.
Thank you. Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Distinguished panel discussants, ladies and gentlemen, our friends from the print and electronic media, my esteemed colleagues from Dhaka Chamber and Ministry of Commerce. Today is the second day of the Bangladesh Trade and Investment Summit, where I would like to welcome all of you in the discussion session on the economic tie of Bangladesh and Europe, a new regulatory regime. As you know, the summit is jointly organized by the Ministry of Commerce, Government of Bangladesh, and the Dhaka Chamber of Commerce and Industry. And we are thankful to our chief guest who will be joining with us very shortly, and we have the permission to start, and he will be joining in. And as you all know that we have also completed the inaugural ceremony yesterday with the Honorable Prime Minister as the chief guest. And she has repeatedly spoken about diversifying our export basket, our product diversification, market diversification. So this is going to go on, and we want to highlight specifically the Europe region, the bilateral trade between Europe and Bangladesh. And of course, as you know, that the economy of Bangladesh is gradually doing better than its regional peers, showing 5.47% economic growth even during the pandemic, while the regional neighbors have all posted negative growth. And Bangladesh is considered to be one of the fastest growing and resilient economies in the world right now. And as you know, according to the IMF, the economic growth rate remained positive despite the pandemic effects, backed by the growing international trade. And our exports in business has been a critical game changer of the global economic relations. And Bangladesh heavily relies on the ready-made garments for export growth, and RMG actually accounts for 84% of the merchandise export, if I'm not mistaken. And Europe is definitely the largest destination of Bangladesh, and our large amount of foreign investment is also received from Europe. And this economic relation is developed over the past years, backed by strong diplomatic ties. And there are many issues, challenges that are holding back our potential economic cooperation, which needs to be addressed to create more economic opportunities in the years to come. In 50 years, we have come a long way, but there's more to go. In this connection, I would like to make a brief presentation encompassing the economic relations, issues, and likely way forward pertinent to the given topic, which will help you in learning on the subject matter for your active participation in the discussion. So without further ado, if you all allow, I would like to just share a brief presentation. I won't take more than 5 to 7 slides. I'm hoping it's visible to everybody. Thank you. So yes, as you know, the subject was a new regulatory regime on the economic tie of Bangladesh and Europe, the second day of the summit. At the very outset, you are well aware of the overall economy. However, I'm going to give you a brief. You've seen the per capita income has gone up to $22, $27, which is much higher than many of our neighbors, 355 billion GDP. The contribution of industry, agriculture, services has all gone up by 30, 13, and 55% respectively. One of our consistent hikes has been seen in the foreign reserve, which is 48 billion according to the Bangladesh Bureau of Statistics. And then we have the employment status, which is basically 60.8 million is the employment. And the unemployment rate as of 2020 by ILO is 5.3%. We have a 19.73% growth and export growth of 15%. And these are all as of the fiscal year of 2020. Now, the success behind Bangladesh, as you know, the LDC graduation is another exciting news for us, which is still happening amidst various challenges, even during the course of a pandemic. Multimodal communication has been very much exercised on. And according to The Economist, despite COVID pandemic, we're the 9th strongest economy, I think, from the 66 emerging countries that they have shortlisted. And 67.39% internet penetration. Subscribers go up to $124 million almost. And from 2016, we had a poverty rate of 24.3%, which has come down to 20.5%. And 97% electricity has been covered, access to electricity, and we have a stable credit rating. And now economic relations, as far as we are concerned, We have seen that Bangladesh enjoys the everything but arms arrangement, the EBA, which grants duty-free and quota-free access. And then Bangladesh is one of the strongest trading partners according to the ITC, and 35% of the entire global trade. Bangladesh's total trade in 2020, primarily 90% of the total export is being dominated by the clothing. European exports into Bangladesh is dominated by machinery and transport equipments, which is almost 29% of the total trade. And development cooperation has been received from European countries in social services, trade, private sector development. In fact, DCCI has been a beneficiary of private sector development, governance, food security, environment, and climate change issues. As for the goods trade and the FDI stock, you can see there has been a slight decline from 2019 to 2020. Export of goods in 2019 was almost 30 billion, which came down to 27.2 billion. Similarly, the imports have seen a similar fall, but interestingly, the FDI inflow from 19 as opposed to 20 has been a rise from 0.68 billion to 0.9 billion, and that's sourced by Bangladesh Bank. Now, major export and import products on the export side, of course, RMG has been leading the industry, followed by footwear, textiles, fisheries, vehicles, toys, and sporting goods. And for imports, we have the heavy machineries, the boilers. Heavy machineries includes the agriculture sector, which is also very dependent. Electrical and electronic equipments, medicals, iron, steel, chemical products, pharmaceuticals, and dairy. At the same time, we have seen a lot of investments from Europe in food and agriculture and fisheries, in energy, power, metal, machineries, textile apparels. We have already mentioned the leather goods, pharmaceuticals, construction and cement, telecom, of course, one of the largest investors in the country. And then we also have investments in insurance, banking, and non-banking. As for the challenges, the Sustainability Compact for Bangladesh is aiming at the labor rights as well as the factory safety creates the challenges for the sustenance of the export-oriented SME RMG factories. As you know, the small ones do have a bit of an issue complying with all these issues, but we have an expert amongst us today who will be sharing more details, and I'm not going to elaborate on that. And then the EBA privileges for Bangladesh will continue until 2029. And for GSP Plus eligibility, Bangladesh requires the 27 core labor, environmental, and industrial compliance. Post LDC graduation, we will face the strict rules of origin requirement, and the LWG certification creates a bit of a challenge to have a sizable market share of Europe when it comes to leather goods and footwear as well. Service export is not significant enough, but we do have certain amount of service exports to the United Kingdom, but we're talking about the European market as a whole. And then SPS and TBT along with the HACCP, the hazard analysis and critical control point and criteria of the FDO and other standard compliances have halted the agro-food product export growth to the European market. We also have an agro-expert to discuss on those issues. And the way forward, we have seen the timeline for implementation of the 27 core compliance need to be extended, and fiscal and technological support can be ensured specifically for the SME units. As you know, the SME units have been the lifeline of this private sector. They do contribute to more than 80% of the industrial employment. At the same time, however, the contribution to GDP is barely 25%, which is probably one of the lowest according to the SME contribution in the top tier nations. Rules of origin, as we mentioned before, can be eased. FTA needs to be signed between Bangladesh and UK. Comprehensive partnership agreements, which also engages the Euro for the preferential market access in the EU market. And then we have the need to form the support to export integration and entrepreneur development project to increase trade between Bangladesh and the European Union. And the TBT, my apologies, and the TBT needs to be reduced and rationalized for revival of our agro and food exports in the European Union. Investment opportunities, of course, Bangladesh needs to expedite on FTAs and PTAs, which already the Ministry of Commerce, as you know, who's our partner, is already working on these with the European Union and the UK, and this will guarantee preferential market access for the exports. European businesses can take the advantage of the API park in the pharmaceutical industries. Local industries in Bangladesh is already present in 110 countries, and these are just the local industrialists of Bangladesh, and I think the European investors can take advantage of that. At the same time, to leverage the benefits of the TRIPS exemption until 2030. At the same time, tech transfer and farming compliance can be done to develop our export-oriented agro and agro-process and foods. As we know that countries like Germany, Netherlands, who have been pioneers in the agri sector, we have a lot to take from them, especially in the form of tech. And European investors can invest in our structured and growing 28 high-tech parks and the IT and ITES business and manufacturing sectors in hundreds and special economic zones. Many of them are almost ready. And the ITES actually has a lot of new facilities in the finance bill that has been published for the fiscal year of 2021. That brings me to the end of my presentation. And at this point of time, I would just quickly jump into the discussion, and I would request the IT to inform us as soon as the Commerce Minister has signed in for us to announce once again. At this point of time, at the very outset, I will bring in one of the speakers. We have with us Mr. Mominuddollah, the Chairman and Managing Director of Eon Group of Industries today. And despite having, my question to you, sir, despite having enormous opportunities of exporting agricultural products in the duty-free and reduced tariff market, Bangladesh is unable to utilize market access to the European countries up to the expectation. And hereby, your company, Eon, is engaged in manufacturing, import, distributing agricultural inputs, and also in the global market. So from your side, we want to know how to overcome these challenges, and of course, agro-processed food product exports in the European market, because just for your information, we have on our summit website and the platform viewers coming in from Europe as well as the rest of the world. As I said, we have 552. They are all listening in, and I will share the numbers with you.
Very insignificant compared to the market size. I can give you some few examples. For example, in aquaculture, we claim to be a very big exporter. We only export like $500 million, but aquaculture alone has $20 billion industry. And you can see how opportunity is actually waiting for us to explore. And we can go into other sector like in agriculture, for example. Even though we are a small country, but we have a lot of advantage that has been given by the Mother Nature. For example, our soil is one of the most fertile soil in the whole world. We have 191% crop intensity in Bangladesh. We have about 203 millimeters of rainfalls every year, which makes our soil fertile every single year. And we produce third largest. We have established already as the third largest vegetable producer. We are third largest rice producer. We are ninth largest potato producer globally. But if you look at our export, is actually insignificant. So compared to the global market demand and supply. So if you look at even our advantage, what we need to focus in actually to take a leadership position in the global market is actually to improve our good farming practices. So we need to bring some change in the policy and regulations. Why we are going to be implementing a lot of good farming practices, which will give a great confidence to our international buyers. And we need to have partners who will be helping us in food process. The food process is a new arena for Bangladesh, even though we just started recently, very humble way in exporting food products, but they are not actually going in the mainstream market in Europe and US. They're mostly going into like ethnic market segments. So in order for us to go into the mainstream market, where the most market lies, we need to really focus on the food quality. And this is what we can actually have joint venture with the European partners or other global partners who has experience in food process, especially in food safety compliances. And that is where we can have a great opportunity to bring in partnership from overseas. If I want to give you some ideas, in Bangladesh, naturally, even though a lot of people has, globally has idea about Bangladesh being such a small country, we don't produce enough food. You have seen the statistics already. With limited resource, we have already achieved all this milestone for the last 25 to 30 years. I want to thank the government for agro-friendly policy and private sector drive actually made it happen. And I think if we can bring some investment in the agro product process industry, also the agro mechanization and automation is very important for us to increase further our productivity of the agriculture. And we also need a lot of investment in research and development. This is one area that we really don't have a lot of strength. And there are a lot of research and development companies in overseas and Europe who has a lot of experience in food process. They can come and join hand with us. We also have a big issue of agro-product waste management. The agro-product waste management is actually a potential wealth for the soil as well. So it goes back to the nature to improve our soil fertility, to increase the organic content of the soil, which will continue to produce high quality products. And we also need to have a lot of fertilizers, which we are still deficient. We import a lot of fertilizer from overseas that we can be easily achieved by having industrialization inside with the global partners. On the few other things, I want to just mention a few milestones that we have achieved in last 20 to 25 years, especially in the area of livestock, particularly in the poultry area. There's immense growth we had over the last 25 years, consistently like 20+% growth. And we are currently producing almost like self-sufficient. We are not importing any eggs or anything, any poultry meats from any overseas. We are actually producing in some cases even surpluses, but we are not able to export it to overseas countries because of the processing limitations that we have in terms of technology and food compliance. So one of the areas I just want to mention to the board here that Bangladesh is third largest fish producing country and third largest tilapia producing country. So we produce huge amount of tilapia, but we do not export any tilapia at all, literally. And we know that China alone exports more than $4 billion worth of tilapia. So this is an area that we need to really capture. And there's a huge market potential that we can take. We need to have a serious talk with us, with the private sector, and also the policymakers, the government sector, to actually to find out what is to be needed to help this industry to take a stance in the global market. A few other things I want to mention, that one areas that we can really make a big change, which is the milk areas. We are producing milk about 11.9 million metric ton per year, but we are actually milk deficient. The reason is that we are not processing milk locally. The processing milk is a little bit of capital intensive and technology oriented. So this is one area that we can welcome our foreign investment. We are at the moment, we are importing at least $500 million worth of milk, powder milks, which can easily be produced with the local milk that we are producing, just by having a joint venture with European partners who has a lot of experience in milk process, especially in the powder milk and value-added milk products. So we can also export it back to the global market, as I have mentioned in the earlier, that there is a huge demand and supply gap, and also this demand and supply gap is going to be even more widened and acute because of the global climate change the food production is under actually threat in many countries. We also face it sometimes. We see the flood and all that things goes in our own country, makes it difficult to produce food, and it happens in every single country as well. So with 9 billion plus population in our lifetime, you're looking at a huge opportunity for us to grow, at the same time to contribute food to the global population for sustainability of the human civilization. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So before we conclude, I want you to answer in 30 seconds. A personal question. Why are you not being able to tap the halal industry? Number one, the top 3 halal exporters have nothing to do with being a Muslim country. If you know that Brazil, Cambodia, Thailand, and many other countries are leading the halal industry. I know that Stan Chart also works on halal. We're going to get back to that later. But also there are some shortfalls. If there are shortfalls, because the reason I'm asking you this question, we are going to make an outcome report because this is a joint initiative of the Ministry of Commerce and Dhaka Chamber, and we are going to place this in the government. So if there are any challenges for the reason that Bangladesh is not being able to tap the halal market, the certification, whether it is the issues with the BSTI, we want you to speak out so we can make those comments accordingly and prepare an outcome report.
Okay. There is one of my personal experience and observation is that many countries, they require to have certain organization to certify halal. So they don't necessarily accept our Islamic Foundation halal certificate as authentic. So we actually need to have the global acceptable halal certified organizations to work in our country, so we can take the certification easily. So this is one area that maybe the chamber can help us to elevate. And the other thing is, when you're comparing with Brazil and other countries, their cost of production is actually lower than us because of there are a lot of other comparative advantages they have that we don't have it. In that case, maybe a government can sit with us and elevate some of these issues, which will make us even more competitive. And I don't see any reason why we can't be competing with the other global players for the halal industry. So I'm sure it's very well possible. I think we need to have a chat with the regulatory authorities and find out the reasons. So it's possible. The market is growing. I think the huge halal market actually, aside from Middle Eastern country, I have witnessed myself, is growing faster in America than anywhere else. So Muslim population in America is growing really fast, and the demand for halal food is increasingly going crazy. So this is one area that we also can tap.
Thank you. Just for your information, the Ministry of Commerce has already been in touch with the Department of Trade in Singapore, and they are already working together. In fact, BCCI is facilitating the local organizations in Singapore to set up facilities in Bangladesh. It's a long ongoing process, but we are also working on it, and we hope that other countries will show interest so we can actually have a proper certification beyond the Islamic Foundation in Bangladesh. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Mr. President, if you allow me for 30 seconds, I want to make a comment. I think it's very important since Minister is probably not connected. I don't know. Maybe he will be listening later. It's time that we in Bangladesh, we define our south and north part of the country. Actually, we are producing more than 60% of our food requirement in the south and north part of the country. As I know that government is expanding the industrialization throughout the country. They have already declared 100 the economic zone. So I think it's time that we should decide which kind of industries that we will allow in south and north, so it does not have any environmental effect on food production. So this is something that should be combined into the policy. And I did not see actually that issue. So this is something that we need to readdress as soon as possible, so we don't start polluting our environment for food production. Thank you, sir. We will put that into a note. At this point of time, let me bring in one of the fastest growing, fast moving consumer goods company that goes beyond the history of Bangladesh. So we have Unilever Bangladesh CEO, and he has a 56-year-old history to share with us. And Unilever Consumer Care is, I think, a new entity of the company. And we're looking forward to hear the contribution of multinational companies like yours
in Bangladesh and the experience of doing business, because we have specifically pointed out that in this summit, we want to highlight the success stories, because the success stories are only what the foreign investors are going to listen to, not the government, not the private sector. It is the success stories that will attract, and you represent a European company, and I'm sure European investors will feel confident when a European company is branding Bangladesh. Over to you, Mr. Javed Akhtar.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's absolutely a delight to be here today and talk about Unilever's experience in Bangladesh. And as you said, we've been more than 56 years in Bangladesh. We've started and we've seen how with the growth of Bangladesh as Unilever, we've grown. Now, if you look at how it has happened over the years, it has not happened by accident, because what you need to do is you need to really ingrain yourself into the country and be actively involved in the development of the category. And if you look at what the Prime Minister yesterday talked about diversification, and I was just reflecting how true she was, because that is exactly how we've grown. From the humble soap that we started in Kalughat factory in the 60s to today, we've got it across 10 categories. Today, we are able to really create categories where we've gone now 9 out of 10 households in Bangladesh. We reach out on an everyday basis more than 500,000 retailers, the customers that we serve every day. And the way it has happened is by making sure you're able to really figure out and understand what are the consumer challenges and issues. I've been with this organization for more than 21 years. And if I go back and look back, there are categories that I started my career, usage of oral care products was abysmal in Bangladesh 21 years back. In fact, it used to be in the vicinity of 16%. Nobody used to use shampoos on a regular basis. And we've gone market by market. And I still remember literally taking a bucket and showing how to use shampoos 20 years back. And if you ever realize, and unfortunately we don't have the blessing, but I'm sure Rowan Appa would empathize. If you have a longer hair and you've never washed it properly, the challenges of running a comb through your hair is a huge struggle. And like many of these things, whether it is detergent powder, whether it is about household cleaning products, one by one, we've been able to, in a very small way, in our way, able to really help. And we've seen how, by really growing with our consumers, growing with our markets, we've been able to really see how we have grown our business in Bangladesh. And Unilever Bangladesh, and Bangladesh, especially within the Unilever, remains a very strategic market. And what we've done is not only grown, what we've tried to do as Unilever is how do you really make sure you're able to positively impact the environment. And over the last few years, we have actually made sure not only are we growing, how do we reduce our environmental footprint. We've reduced water consumption by 37%, which is equivalent to several days of water demand for this country. We have reduced energy consumption by 26%, which can actually power 2.1 family for a day. Or for that matter, if you actually look at our overall carbon emission is equivalent to 2.8 million trees in this country. And today, what we are working on by tomorrow is a very debatable thing, but we need to make sure that how do you bring capability of sustainable plastic? How do you really recycle? So we'll build 80% capacity within our business to recycle plastics in this market. We'll make sure we create a complete business model of how do you really have HDP and LDPs collected in this market. And how do you really get, and one of the big struggle, and I hope I can come back because that's a challenge I've given my team, is that we will collect more plastic than the plastic we produce so that we are able to avoid a landfill. And the reason for many of these things is also to making sure that we are able to have a positive impact of how we grow this business. Because what we've seen in this country, it's been a phenomenal journey for Unilever. And we've seen phenomenal growth and we've really grown over the years. But even today, as I speak to you, let me give you some statistics on per capita consumption of FMCG in Bangladesh. And you've shown great numbers of how our per capita income has grown. In fact, we're much higher than our neighbor, our next door big neighbor. But if I can quote you a number, please, that the per capita FMCG consumption in this country is $23. In India, it is $44. And if I can compare a similar country with similar population sort of density or close to it, Philippines, it's $100. So it just talks about the headroom as a business, as a category, as a sector we have to really make this whole FMCG grow in multiples. And that's the promise and the belief that we have. Over the last few years, we have really been able to invest. So if I look at, we've invested nearly 60 million euro over the last 5 years in our own facility. As you said, we've actually acquired and spent 220 million euros to buy the GSK consumer care brand. Globally, Unilever has bought it. And Unilever Consumer Care Limited has come into the franchise. A fantastic role Horlicks plays in terms of balanced nutrition to this country. Or for that matter, if you look at, we're actually now investing in the Mongla EPZ zone to expand our factory and operation now. So as a business, it is in typically multinational like ours, what we believe is that, listen, there's a huge amount of opportunity for us as a country. And you've given many of the statistics. But let me give you the statistics in terms of where does FMCG thrive. As a country, nearly 60% of our population is less than 30 years. Now that talks about the demographic dividend this country has, the consumption economics that's going to completely unlock to really drive it up. If I look at the stability of the economy and socio-political scenario, because as a business, a stable and a great governance always gives great confidence. And we have seen what a fantastic example our country has been in so many ways. And if I look at many other elements, because I always get asked this question that you guys have been here forever and probably that's easy to operate. But I keep on telling them that, listen, you must understand in development economics, there is something called duality. And I'm sure Rubana Appa would know much better than I would on this whole space of where you will have different side of economic model within the same country. So even as business, you actually operate in a duality, where we make sure that you're able to really leverage your existing process to find ways and efficiencies that you're able to unlock and make sure you win competitively in the market itself. And our role as business is to make sure you're able to really understand consumer problem, figure out the impact that you can do in the society. You need to be vested in the country itself. And we have been vested in the country and realize the role of the business of how do you really make sure you have an impact positively in this country. Because if this country and if this society actually grows, that is when Unilever or any of these businesses, and not Unilever, any business that you really want to come and invest, because there is a huge amount of runway. And I'll finish my monologue by saying one thing, Mr. President, is that I'm an optimist. I believe as much as there is a need for money, I think there is a bigger thing of a dream and for us to dream about Bangladesh and the economy and the prosperity that we can bring in. And those who actually dare to dream and die for the dream will actually make a difference for this country. And I believe that's what, if we're coming to invest, you need to dream of a bigger, better Bangladesh and make sure that you've got a stake on the ground to build that Bangladesh. Because only then, I guess, you come for the long term. You don't come for only a few years. Thank you so much. That was my monologue in terms of our experiences I tried to capture. I hope it did justice to your expectation.
Thank you, Mr. Akhtar. In fact, I had the privilege of telling the Honorable Prime Minister yesterday that Bangladesh no longer builds Bangladesh, but beyond it rather contributes to the global economy.
Oh, absolutely.
And at the same time, I was also mentioning to the Foreign Minister that not necessarily your foreign investors need diplomatic immunity, but you can actually make them ambassadors, because they should be the ones who should be promoting the country. While on the commercial side, the Ministry of Commerce is taking care of it. On the diplomatic side, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is taking care of it. At the same time, we are all ambassadors of Bangladesh. I believe that, at the same time, the private sector perspective, the foreign investor perspective, commercially has a huge impact. And of course, I think that that will definitely create a new format of branding or country branding for the trades from the trade side. And anyways, thank you. Thank you for your inputs and insights. We are going to jot them down. And in the meantime, I have been informed that the Honorable Commerce Minister has joined in. We will address as soon as, is he online, IT?
Yes, sir, he's online.
Okay, as soon as he turns on, we will address him. Okay, so maybe he is listening in and he's probably in the meeting at the same time. Anyways, at this point of time, let me bring in another foreign investor, which goes back beyond Bangladesh, and probably I'm not entirely sure if it's over 100-year history. We have one of the top-tier banks in the country, Standard Chartered, which needs no further introduction, and their CEO, who also needs no further introduction. Let me just bring in Mr. Nasir Ijaz Bijoy. Sir, thank you for joining us. And we would like to know the experience of Standard Chartered Bank in Bangladesh and their success in our financial sector. And you have played a major role, even though there is a lot of banks and financial institutions as well as non-banking. But the role of SCB in shaping the banking system and international trade at the same time, the way you've been facilitating, whether it is through your different initiatives of bonds or guarantees and many other products, which has made SCB a landmark and a success story in Bangladesh. I would like to hear from you. Over to you, Mr. Bijoy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for having me today. The first point that I would like to highlight is that we strongly believe that whatever is good for the country is good for us in the long run. And we have been benefited by the extraordinary growth story of the country, especially in the last 12 years. I'll just highlight one perspective so that people can understand the delta that has shifted in the last 12 years. It took 36 years for the country to reach to $80 billion of GDP from 8 billion since our independence. And it took only 12 years to grow from 80 to 320, which means it grew 3 times in 1/3 of a period. And Standard Chartered, being part of this, fabric of the economy, has actually got tremendous benefit. And I'll give you an example of that. In the early 2000s, there are 2 international banks who were a bit skeptical about the potential of the market and decided to leave. And Standard Chartered acquired both. And today, we sit very comfortably with the largest market share amongst the foreign banks because of the right decision we have taken, because we were committed to the market and we believed this market has potential, and it is now has actually transpired. So I think it's not only Standard Chartered. If you think about the industry, there are views about the governance standards evolving in the country. But I would like to share here. Standard Chartered has been in this market for 116 years, and it's still one of the highest taxpayers in the financial sector. And it's not Standard Chartered only; it's the Unilever in FMCG, Telenor in telecom, British American Tobacco in tobacco, MetLife in insurance. So there's DHL in logistics. So what it tells you that a company in Bangladesh can fully remain compliant, at the same time have a very profitable, attractive operation. And it requires, as Javed mentioned, it requires a commitment for the country, because it's not a short-term story; it's a long story. And a company needs to have that resilience and the ability to navigate the challenges of an emerging economy. But as long as you're there with full commitment, I think it's absolutely possible to do it. Any emerging market will have its challenges, but that's where the returns are higher. So I think in our long experience, we believe that the risk reward for this market is definitely favorable to the investors.
Thank you, sir. In fact, when you talk about the challenges, one end of the tunnel is challenges, which means automatically the other end is the opportunity. We just need to go through that tunnel. And that's where you come in with your banking and financial services to guide the investors and not only give them the capital or the equity, but also the advice on their cash flow management and all of that. And of course, most importantly, access to parallel financing, conventional banking, not with respect to the bankers, but of course, it has become a bit of a challenge given the guidelines they have to follow. But at the same time, you're also introducing other products like guarantees and then bonds. And we need to ensure bonds, especially for the small investors, so they have easy access to finance. But that is something that is expected from all the financial institutions as well as the private sector to come forward. And we look forward to your continued cooperation. And thank you for joining us. At this point of time, we have heard from agriculture, we have heard from FMCG, we have heard from financial sector. But right now, I'm connecting all the dots. All these dots are connected by telecom, one way or the other. And that is also another success story of the digital Bangladesh we see today. And we have with us the CEO of Grameenphone. I'm not going to elaborate on Grameenphone. It is known not only in Bangladesh, but in the entire world. A company of Telenor. We have the CEO, Mr. Yasir Azman, with us. And of course, it is the leading telecommunication investor in Bangladesh, not only one of the largest FDIs, not only one of the highest taxpayers amongst many others, but from you, we want to know the significance of a joint venture investment that you initially made, and for further trace prospects in the telecommunication sector of Bangladesh. And of course, at the same time, I'm going to repeat again, your brief experience of the success behind being in Bangladesh. Over to you, sir.
Excellent. Thank you, Rizwan Bhai. Greetings to all and assalamu alaikum. And very good afternoon. Just let me start with where we are today. As you mentioned that, Grameenphone, the leading telco service provider into the country. Today, this is a service provider having 83 million plus subscribers. And it's not that what we say that Grameenphone is having 83 million customers and as a business entity. It is actually making difference every day and empowering every individual with the connectivity solution. So it's not one, it is empowering every business entity, be it a small and the large one, be it an individual and a student or an agriculture or an housewife, everyone being, empowered to the solution. This is one story. The second, you see, this is a company which obviously towards the investors is a good return on investment. The dividend paid out on time and quite long, I would say, from the inception, right after the inception. Third thing, it contributes to the national exchequer. It's like as good as almost 93,000 crore from the inception, and this year it is 8,000 crore, which is almost 74% of the revenue it has generated already in this year. So if you see it says the segment is targets, the way it's create difference in its life, the way it returns to the investors, and the way it contributes to national exchequer, it's all about all these three segments. It's a success story. It's a win-win-win-win. So I cannot explain better that how successful an entity being a telco service provider in Bangladesh. Now going back to the inception, it's just a 25 years story. Today we talk about startup, and there can be any good example of a startup which has such level of different success stories with just an idea. But it's not just an idea of a local person or an investor coming from Europe. It's also the visionary leadership. I think all of we are aware of that back in 1996, our honorable Prime Minister, the current Prime Minister, actually wanted to democratize the mobile telecom services and wanted to take in towards the marginal population in the country. And there, if you go to the root, it has started with that village phone, village lady phone. I think we all remember those advertisements. And any business gets successful when it makes and solves a problem towards the society. And that route, they're starting for the marginal population, bringing in the connectivity solution to empower the people of Bangladesh, being committed. Today, it's the leading service provider. There were not only one license, but we are talking about the number one operator here. So it's an start to that. Today is a story. It tells everything about what you'd like to know about success. But it doesn't end there. You see, if you see the opportunity which has started back in 1996, the country was lacking a fixed connectivity solution. It has started with an opportunity to connect the marginal population, and then it's grew. But in 2010, the government talked about Digital Bangladesh. That brought in the new possibilities, the way the platform has been created. So we have not been only benefited by the Digital Bangladesh Vision platform. We became the active ecosystem partner into that platform. So they're also a win-win situation in the country. And then finally, if you look at today, the government is talking about 2041 perspective plan, and that talks about the youth of Bangladesh. That talks about, by 31, the population, the poverty will go down below 3%. And by 2041, the poverty will not be there in Bangladesh. We'll be a high income country. this vision is only possible if you go by the narratives. It says that the youth of Bangladesh, the democratization, the technology, the benefits of the metro areas to take to the rural with the vehicle of digitalization of those services, education, hospital, health, agriculture. So it started in 1996 with an opportunity to contribute to grow. It has given a new platform in 2008 or 2010 with the Digital Bangladesh vision, and today it's talking about what is the prospects moving forward in looking ahead in 2031 and 2041. So I do believe it's like the story of Grameenphone in Bangladesh. It's a glorious story. However, it's like Nasser highlighted, and any emerging market will always have challenge. We coming into this market, we are part of basically forming the regulations. We cannot avoid, we cannot say that we are not part into it because it's new. And every day the digital economy coming into the country in place, the IT sectors are booming. We don't have 100 years of old laws and regulations the way we see in the labor market. This digital economy is something the regulations needs to be built now, and we are part into it. With all those challenges in an emerging market, which is common anywhere, everywhere, we take the pride to develop together, create together, and move forward together. I think Bangladesh gives an ample opportunity for the foreign investors to grow. At the same time, needs to take the responsibility of the challenges we have in different markets and resolve those things together, working with the regulatory bodies. I'll stop here, Rizwan Bhai, if you have any specific thing to understand. You're muted, probably.
My apologies. Sorry, I was muted. So thank you for your delightful insights. And we always have been using Telenor as an example because, of course, not only the size of the investment, but the impact. It's primarily not the money, but the impact it has created through its services, through telecommunication, contribution to digital economy and beyond. And of course, we would like you to do the same. Share your success stories with your country. And like I said, I mentioned to the foreign minister, we should use all our foreign investors as our brand ambassadors to promote the country. Bringing on to our next speaker, who is actually an ambassador and has worked in various capacities in promoting Bangladesh in the field of RMG. And of course, has been the face of RMG for 2 years when she gave leadership to the BGMEA, and at the same time, negotiating across the table with the European Union and all these buyers. And in fact, one of the biggest speed breakers during her career, I must say, was when the pandemic hit the country. Negotiating with the government for the stimulus package for all these people, for 4.4 million employees in the RMG industry and so on, which also eventually benefited the other export-oriented sectors as well. I would like to bring in Dr. Rubana Haq and not give any further introduction to her and ask her to share her brief with us. Over to you.
Mr. President and Excellency, Minister of Commerce. Rizwan, I think, everybody knows about RMG already. Everybody knows about RMG already. However, it's a success story and it's not something new. In about 40 years, in about 4 decades, we have gone from an export of $30 million to $30 billion. We have gone from 120,000 employees to 4.4 million employees. Currently, we almost EU imports around 20% from us. So, unfortunately, 80% of our products are based on only 5 primary products, basic products. So, we have had our limitations as well. We have had minimal fiber diversification. So we just concentrate on 5 basic cotton products. So EU, if we talk about EU Bangladesh, and that's what I believe I'm supposed to be speaking about today, it's very clear that things are going to change. Now, along with every challenge comes a huge opportunity. So with the new GSP proposal, the draft proposal, a couple of things are a little unsettling for the RMG industry, of course, and actually for everyone. You do know that the new GSP proposal will be actually directly talking about not only the 15 core UN and ILO convention, but also it'll also be relating to 27 international conventions. Also, the new entrance in the EU new draft is about basically the human rights, labor rights, and of course, it goes into sustainability. It goes into various areas of especially when you talk about children in armed conflict, it goes into ILO Convention 144 on basically tripartite consultation. It also talks about our immigrants in EU. So in case of readmission of our nationals, if we don't allow that, EU can actually react. What scares most of us in the new EU GSP draft proposal is, of course, the pace that it is proposing to basically threaten us with. So what they've done is they've introduced a single entry point mechanism, which means that the DG Trade will be able to review any case of dispute in the fastest possible time. So, earlier we used to see when a dispute arose, what happened was it used to take its time. Now it'll be faster. So that's what worries us because, though the whole thing is more responsive and it's more structured, it also exposes us to a lot of vulnerable positions. Unfortunately, the trade unions have already appealed and they've come up with a joint statement saying that EU, the Commission, should be looking at political situations as well. Now that's threatening because as it is, governance has become a key factor in EU's consideration of the draft proposal, but also with the further focus on civil society and NGOs, it becomes a little difficult. Yes, in terms of environment, you do know that Bangladesh is one of the lowest carbon emitters, yet, unfortunately, the focus is always on Bangladesh, and instead of just adaptation, we are also pushed to take measures to mitigate. It's a little sad because it's the typical landscape where we continue to be vulnerable to external threats. My point is very simple. Given that this new EU proposal it imposes more strategic conditions for GSP eligibility, and it increases the possibility, of course, of quick withdrawal of preference. It lowers the threshold for EU protective measures. It may also signal increased vulnerability for us. But due to a more formal process for requesting EU to be included in regional cumulation, which is actually extended cumulation, that gives us a chance to appeal to EU if we are threatened to suffer backlash of withdrawn trade privileges. So basically, we can appeal to EU and say, we can appeal for extended cumulation as well and include another third-party country and go forward with a fresh appeal. So that is there. That's good for us. So, and also, the threshold which was earlier applicable to us was a higher threshold. Right now, the threshold will be calculated in terms of only value and not volume. So that also gives us a break. Frankly, if we talk about it, I really think it gives us a chance to position ourselves in a more positive manner because it talks about sustainability. And as far as we are concerned, we've just hit the new goal. The new achievement of having 150 green certified factories, the highest in the world. So who's actually monitoring our progress? Are we always going to be vulnerable and susceptible to Western prescriptions? Isn't it time that we also tell them that, look, it's a mutually beneficial arrangement. It's just not about you guys giving us the GSP privilege, it's also about you benefiting, your consumers benefiting, your big corporations benefiting. So one thing, Rizwan, we must do is collectively go forward and have a collective voice about appealing to them so that they also understand the disconnect between sourcing and sustainability. It's completely, for the last 4 years, Bangladesh has suffered almost 2.35% of loss of value. Now, who's going to look at all those? So instead of just telling us that, there are systemic violations, I think they should also be studying systemic violations in sourcing and regular references to perception instead of detailed and authentic reporting. These must be taken into consideration by EU. And there cannot be shifting goalposts every other day. I mean, in spite of Bangladesh making huge strides, and you heard all the previous speakers, commending Bangladesh. And as we build Bangladesh, you rightly pointed out that we contribute to the global economy, but who's acknowledging all that? And, just one report of the EU will, threaten everything. So I think the privilege goes both ways. And if so, sourcing practices must also be taken into account because it is just not about their requirement of sustainability. It's also about sustainable livelihoods, which is a huge part of in the landscape of Bangladesh. So they might as well be mindful of that also. I think I'll stop there because I think I've spoken too much. Thank you.
I have one brief question for you. When you talk about sustainability, you talk about sustainable production, sustainable sourcing. Do you think we get sustainable pricing?
Not at all, Rizwan. So that's why I just said that, we've just had a drop of 2.35% in a 4 years CAGR. So we have suffered in prices. Right now, the market is being flooded with orders. But are we looking at whether we are actually supplying at considerable, at least acceptable price range? We are not. So most of us are keeping our production spaces open. Many of us are even enhancing our production capabilities and lines and capacity. But are we diversifying into other products? I'll just give you a small example. EU buys around $2.65 billion worth of just synthetic trousers. And Bangladesh only supplies 178 million. So, there are big gaps between what we supply and what they're buying. What about shifting our gears and thinking about more value-added production? And of course, like you rightly mentioned about Honorable Prime Minister talking about sector diversification, it is time we realize that we need to diversify. It's just not about being protective about our own ready-made garment sector. Many of the entrepreneurs in RMG would like to diversify, and a quick bridge would be probably light engineering. Thank you, Rizwan.
Thank you. Thank you. We asked for a speaker. We got a complimentary keynote. Thank you very much, Dr. Ribana Haq. At this point of time, I know that we have the Honorable Minister who has been listening in. I have been in touch with his office. Sir, thank you for joining us. I know you're extremely busy today, but you gave us the time despite your busy schedule. We have had the views of the agricultural sector. We have had the views of the telecom sector, the banking sector, as well as the FMCG, and three of them are large, successful foreign investors, the Standard Chartered, Unilever, and Telenor. Some of these companies have been successful in this region even before Bangladesh. Some companies go back beyond 50 years of history, and we have been hearing the success stories. And as yesterday we heard from all our speakers and yourself, we should be asking our foreign investors to promote Bangladesh. Our foreign minister himself said, our prime minister herself mentioned the emergence of exports and products and market diversification. So at this point of time, I would humbly request our today's chief guest, Mr. Tipu Munshi MP, the Honorable Minister, the Ministry of Commerce, that you have listened to the discussion of the business of Bangladesh as well as the European market and perspective. So, sir, we wanted your valued remarks on how this economic relation can be improved with further new scope and opportunities to enhance further bilateral relations between Europe and Bangladesh. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Rizwan, President, CCI, the honorable ambassadors, distinguished CEOs, dear guests and participants, BJP President former, Ms. Ubana Haq, and all the dignitaries. Assalamu alaikum, good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to have joined you in today's seminar on Europe. There are important questions that we would like to address. How we can strengthen our trade relationship with our biggest export market. How we can make our relationship a win-win proposition for both Bangladesh and European business. And how we prepare well for the challenges that we will face after our graduation. Bangladesh development strategy has been based on export-led growth. Europe is our biggest export market. We have been very successful to take advantage of the everything but arms scheme of the European Union. 97% of our export to the EU enter the market duty-free. Dear participants, we take pride in the fact that the UN CDP has recommended Bangladesh for graduation from LDC category in 2026. However, with our development and graduation comes some new trade rules and regulations. The EBA is for LDCs only. After we graduate, we lose the duty-free, quota-free market access in the UA. However, we get additional 3 years transition time. We graduate in 2026 and the EBA facility continues until 2029. Though we are trying to get a little more time, the Minister of Commerce has been working hard for many years in anticipation of changed trade regime after graduation to protect our export market and to ensure continued preferential market access in Europe. Our efforts and continuous engagement with the European Union have been successful. Let me explain. We wanted to qualify for the GSP Plus scheme for the UAE after our graduation. The GSP Plus offers duty-free market access for RMG products and our major export items. However, one of the eligibility criteria for GSP Plus became a major obstacle for us and made us ineligible for GSP Plus. Under the import shares criteria, EU imports from Bangladesh were much above the current threshold of 7.4 and makes it as ineligible. I'm very happy to inform you that in the draft of new GSP regulation, which was published last month, the European Union has proposed to remove the import share criteria from the GSP Plus eligibility. This they have done to ensure some smoother transition and continued access to GSP Plus status for graduating LDCs. Bangladesh will be the direct beneficiary of these changes. Dear participants, the draft GSP regulation will now be discussed in the European Council and Parliament and with other stakeholders before it comes effective in 2024. We have to be watchful of these discussions and ramp up support for the graduating LDC through our network of business associations, partners and friends in Europe. We are happy that our efforts and continuous proactive engagement over the years with EU, both at the working level and senior leadership level, have been successful in convincing the EU to drop the import share criteria. I think Secretary, Minister of Commerce and his team for successfully engaging with the EU. Dear guests, we have to remain cautious throughout the journey. We are in 2021. The new GSP regulation kicks in January 2024. We graduate in 2026 and EBA ends in 2029. As per the draft of the new GSP regulation, the major obstacle removed will qualify for GSP Plus. We have to remain cautious because there are new expectations from our European colleagues on labor, good governance and environment issues. The EU has proposed to add new international conventions and agreements to the GSP list, such as the Paris Agreement on Climate Change and some new ILO and UN conventions. We have to work with other ministries to ensure we are fully compliant before the time comes when we apply for GSP+. I urge my friends and business colleagues to work unitedly to protect and promote the country image abroad. We often are misunderstood by our foreign business partners, and there is something negative portrayal of Bangladesh based on false and or misguided information. We have to remain cautious and actively promote Bangladesh abroad, both through physical and virtual promotional activities. Ministry of Commerce seeks support of our entrepreneurs, exporters, business association, and chambers in promoting a positive image of Bangladesh. To gain business in Europe, this is essential. After we graduate, at one point, we will have to go for signing free trade agreement. The negotiation for signing a free trade agreement takes many years of painstaking preparation and discussion. FTA is giving the same tariff advantage to our trading partners. Our entrepreneurs and business have to start preparing for that challenges. The tariff protection enjoyed by local industries would not be there. The subsidies of incentives now provided may not be there after our graduation. All WTO regulations and international trade laws will become applicable for Bangladesh after we graduate. We are trying to get some additional years, but eventually we will be losing the preferential treatment that we have enjoyed as an LDC. Increase our efficiency and productivity capacity is very important to face these challenges. I think Ms. Rubana also mentioned that we shall have to find new market, new productivity, value-added production, which can help us in that regard. Encouraging foreign investment is also a good conduct to get new technology and skills. For that, we will have to treat our investors and foreign partners well. Dear participants, why will a European business do business with us unless they are treated fairly? We have an ongoing business climate dialogue with the EU. We try to solve different challenges and challenges faced by European business doing business in Bangladesh. European businesses doing business in Bangladesh. Their issues are discussed with the relevant agencies of the government. Ultimately, we have to create a win-win environment so that our foreign entrepreneurs feel comfortable doing business with us. Bangladesh has a long journey ahead. Let us make this journey smoother by working as a team. To conclude, I would like to extend my thanks and gratitude to all participant entrepreneurs, respected dignitaries, print and electronic media, and the program organizers. Joy Bangla, Joy Bangla.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I would like to strongly acknowledge the reduction of import share of the EU GSP Plus criteria is motivating and helpful for the GSP Plus realization post 2026. And we can negotiate later in other criteria. And this will definitely motivate more investment in Bangladesh from Europe. And we also have a session tomorrow on the LDC graduation, the smooth transition and preparedness, where we will be talking about the negotiation. And of course, the Ministry of Commerce plays a very strong part in it. And we are hopeful not only because the Ministry of Commerce is working behind it relentlessly, but obviously our Honorable Minister first represents the private sector and then the public sector, because he has been the face of the BGMEA and many other associations in the past. So we always take pride in announcing that he is first the representative of the private sector and then the public sector. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. And this brings us to the end of our event today. And I would humbly thank our distinguished, I would say, august diaspora of speakers, Dr. Rubana Haq, Mr. Yasir Azman, Mr. Javed Akhtar, Mr. Mominuddola, and of course, Mr. Nasir Ijaz Bijoy, and all other participants. We have had up to 99 participants here. We had a few hundred on our summit platform. And needless to mention, I must reiterate the fact that this is not only a joint initiative of the Ministry of Commerce and the Dhaka Chamber of Commerce on the second day of the Bangladesh Trade and Investment Summit. But it also goes to show that with the right guidance from the public sector, the private sector can spearhead and connect Bangladesh as the economy of tomorrow into the new normal world. So thank you everyone for your kind participation and your valued remarks. We will definitely prepare an outcome report and place it for the minister for his opinion, and of course move on thereon and how to move the way forward together. Thank you everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. Assalamu alaikum.
So,
ভালো থাকুন, সবাইকে শুভেচ্ছা। Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.